Welcome to Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the fifth dimension.
Welcome to another podcast episode of Merkaba Chakras. I'm your host, Vaughn Galt. Today, we discuss overcoming abuse of all kinds in our lives, such as emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, with life coach and author Mannette Morgan. Now, I've always said in Buddhism, if you want to get into a fifth dimensional, multidimensional awareness in whatever reality you reside in at the moment, you must address the dense issues that hold down your personal frequency and learn from them so you don't recreate the same tough life lessons that bring down your frequency. So, with that, Manette, welcome to Merkaba Chakras.
Thank you for having me, Vaughn. I appreciate it so much, and I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, I love your book and I love the topic that you discuss, and it's unfortunate that you had gone through so much, but because you had gone through so much in your life when it comes to abuse in all these different ways, you know so much and you can speak from your own personal experience and how you overcome it. So it's not just like someone who studies it in school and tries to understand how to help somebody with that, but you actually come from that background. So you know firsthand what many other psychologists study. So, before we dig into your book, Finding Your Voice, A Path to Recovery for Survivors of Abuse, can you tell us your story for how you even got into this work?
Yeah, basically, like you said, I am a survivor of childhood emotional, sexual, and physical abuse. Unfortunately, my dad was emotionally abusive and sometimes physically, not to the extreme, but he was physical at times. And then I was sexually abused by a relative, a cousin, from the time I was 8 years old to almost 12 or almost 13 till 12. And that was probably the hardest part by far. Um, of course, my household grew up with a lot of dysfunction. And my dad was basically an alcoholic. He grew up in his own dysfunctional, really horrific home. His mother was actually mentally unstable. His dad was an alcoholic. Um, then from there, as a teenager, I went on and started dating my high school sweetheart who was narcissistic, gaslighter, emotionally abusive. Married him at 19, had 2 children, and was lucky enough to get out and leave at 24. And since then, I'm happy to say I've never been in another abusive relationship. After I was gone for a little while, I had a few things there I had to learn, but dove into self-help, therapy, all the things it took to get my life back together and break the cycle of abuse in my own life. From there, I just worked hard, had my own companies, did this stuff for years and raised children. And then one day I looked up and I was married to this amazing man who took us on an adventure to live overseas in Singapore. And while I was there, I had family and friends and everyone say, you need to figure out how to help other people. You figured something out. You have a gift you can share. And so that's what started the journey of becoming a certified life coach. And then when I got back to the States, I started writing the book because I was teaching workshops and I just couldn't teach them everything.
Yeah.
So that's how it all evolved. And then I spent about 5-7 years writing the book. So that's how we got here from point A to point B. Yeah.
Yeah, well that's quite a journey, and it's really easy to look at someone like yourself from the healthy side after going through all of this. But for many people in these types of relationships right now that were influenced by their childhood, like yours was, or are currently in childhood abuse of some form, like you were, they're different points in time, and so you can relate to all of them. The thing that I found interesting is of your background, your father had the same repeat cycles of abuse in various ways. And so he just picked it up. Maybe it was an unconscious way that he picked it up from his upbringing, and then just unconsciously or in a way was conditioned through his upbringing, and then carried on that pattern with you. And then with you, you stopped it.
Yes, exactly. That is probably my greatest accomplishment in my life, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
My children are healthy and happy. They're 30s and they have amazing partners, and they're just normal people, what I would call normal. I mean, there's a lot of
Right.
normal out there, different kinds, but
Yeah.
they didn't have to live what I lived. That was my biggest fear when I started therapy, is when the therapist told me the chances of them being victims of abuse were like 88% or something. And I was just horrified, to be honest.
Right, right. That's a statistic if you carried on that pattern onto them.
Mhm.
But you recognize that you didn't want that in your life, and you didn't want to carry on that pattern, so you stopped that pattern. Let me ask you something really quick about your family background. So your father was raised in this type of household. He what was his parents raised in? Was it much the same type of parenting style?
I have suspicions after talking to I'm really close to my dad's sister.
Uh-huh.
And I really think something happened horrific to my grandmother, his mother. I
Mm,
think she was probably abused and maybe even sexually abused as a child. I have my suspicions
mm-hmm,
because she turned out to have some major emotional and mental issues as a young woman and an adult.
mm-hmm,
And just her overreactions, even like me as a child staying at her home with my cousin there, which isn't the cousin that abused me
mm-hmm.
at all. She was very protective of me. And it's almost like she knew something that maybe other people didn't know, is the way I would
Right.
put it. And I look back now as an adult and talking to my aunt and kind of can see things differently, like we always do later on. But yeah, it was just very dysfunctional. His mother was very unstable. I mean, there was an incident once that she wanted him to go to a certain church. My grandfather wanted him to go to certain church, and she just lost it one morning, held a knife to him, and was going to kill him if the dad took him to the other church. I mean, she was very unstable at times. And
Mm,
can you imagine growing up in that and how it makes you so dysfunctional? And my dad has never understood um, he doesn't understand empathy very well, or compassion, or he's very hands off. He doesn't hug you. I mean, even to this day, I can talk to him on the phone and say, "I love you, Dad," and he'll go, "Okay." He can't say he loves you. He's just
yeah.
very disconnected. And that's from
Right.
his childhood. And it's a
Yeah.
horrible scar he's carried his whole life.
So that behavior of disconnecting, like you say, is it like
Mhm.
a family way of coping?
I
Is
think it
that
was for them because if you got close, you got hurt. If you
mm,
trust, they'll hurt you. So there's this separation and keep them at arm's length, and then you don't get hurt. It's like they say, to truly love,
mm,
you have a full heart and a broken heart. I mean, let's just be honest, it takes both. And that took me a long time to learn as a young woman after I left my abusive relationships, to love
mm,
again, because you learn not to trust, and I
right,
had to, relearn those things. Mhm.
right, right. Well, that's very interesting, and I want the audience members to really understand this as well, because through my consultations, we would go through family history, because my clients will try to figure out where they got certain belief systems about their limitations. And oftentimes it's picked up unconsciously by the way their parents raised them, who their parents, in one or both parents, unconsciously picked up some kind of patterning style in how their parents raised them, and then it goes on. So it's almost like you got the the person, their parents, the grandparents, and the great-grandparents. It's almost 4 generations of continual repeating of bad behavior that's been unconsciously conditioned through your environment you grow up in, and then nobody stopped to look at these patterns and go, wait a minute, it's not working. It's not
It's
working.
unhealthy.
It's unhealthy. We're continuing to carry on patterning from, and you don't need to be a psychologist. You don't need to, all these other things to recognize patterns. Okay.
No.
So you have, you suffer from, from child abuse. One or both parents had abusive parents. Their grandparents had an abusive style parenting. The great grandparents had, that was their, so it doesn't take a rocket scientist to notice the behavior patterns. But what it does take is a very courageous person to recognize, I don't like this. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to find the answer so I can learn to live my life and I don't repeat these unconscious behavior patterns that are not serving me anymore onto the next generation. So yeah, and that is extremely hard. Most people, like you demonstrated with your brief recap of your family history, and I hear this with my clients as well when they come for consultations for sixth senses or for their awakening ascension process, that some of the things that are holding them back are these unconscious conditioning or behavior patterns that they picked up from their ancestry. And that is one of the hardest things for most people to do. I mean, we're talking 4 generations of repeating bad habits. That's hard to recognize and
Oh, yeah.
stop. And so if this generation
Yeah.
right
I
now
always say, mhm, I,
can do that, that abodes for the upward climb for
oh,
everybody else, for the
it,
generations going down the line.
it is, there's some kind of study, and I can't remember who did it, but it shows that a lot of times you will see behaviors in great great grandchildren of the great great grandparents, and they never even met.
Yeah.
And you will see similarities in their behaviors just because of what you're talking about. It's just passed on generation to generation. So you can pass on these really positive traits and behaviors, or you can pass on these really negative, harmful behaviors that hinder and basically crush people sometimes in humans, So
Yeah.
it can go either way. So which way do you want to take it? Is the way I looked at it as a young woman. It was like, I don't have to be my dad. I don't have to be my grandmother, or
Yeah.
I can be me, and I can take the best of my parents and share that with my children. And that was part of the reason I left their dad, was to get them away from that too. It's like, I don't want them to have that influence in their life. I want them to have, my thing was, I can stay here for them, as people would try to tell you where I grew up in the South, and suffer through this marriage and raise them, or I can leave and maybe one day I'll show them what real love is, what real respect is,
Yeah.
what those kind of things are. So that's what I chose.
Yeah. And I mean, that's great because, many people are unconsciously conditioned into destructive behaviors from their family lineage. And, you're sitting right in front of this beautiful picture or mural behind you. And in Buddhism, they have a word in Zen Buddhism called Enso, ENSO. And it means the circle around a teacher. Okay. It's a nice clear circle around a teacher. That's the vibrant aura field of a teacher. And in the image behind you is the image of a tree with roots. And what are we talking about? Cleaning the roots of bad growth and growing a brand new tree that's much healthier and more vibrant.
Exactly.
And
Trim those little branches that don't need to be there, and let it flourish and soak up the sun and the water, and just flourish, like you said, into
yeah,
what it can be. So I'm all about it.
I
In my
love
book, I
that.
use a tree metaphor because I think it's so important, and it's the roots, the trunk, the branches and then the leaves, or the blossoms of a tree that are what our life is. And it's kind of how you grow through this process and recovery after abuse, is the way I use it as a metaphor to take you through it, so that it's much easier. And I try to simplify it. It doesn't have to be so hard, in my opinion.
No, it doesn't.
It can be simple.
And it really can. And I just love that. I mean, there's really no accidents. Creation doesn't make any accidents.
Yeah.
We just don't see the greater,
I
bigger
agree.
picture. And I'll be honest with you. There are times where I'm like, woo, the universe, I don't know where you're going with this one, but I'm just gonna bench myself with this one. But then there are times like, oh, I see see where that fits in the greater cog of things. So, but there are no accidents, and you're sitting right in front of a beautiful mirror that embodies exactly what we're talking about today. And of all my episodes, I offer a lot of episodes that people can learn things and grow in things. But I really want to do an episode on family, unconscious conditioning and behavior patterns that are unconsciously carried on from generation to generation to generation. And we need to stop, assess our life, and figure out, where did we learn these habits and behaviors and beliefs about ourselves? Because when you sit down and do that, like you do with your coaching with your clients, you realize that most of the behaviors that you have unconsciously picked up through your upbringing, through society, through your religion, through your family, most of it's family environment, you realize that's not even yours. You're stealing other people's issues and carrying it on in your life and in your lifetime. So when you take all that away, and you realize you're just stealing somebody else's belief systems and conditioning and bad habits and their issues and just replaying it in your life, then how much of your life are you really living? Like, how much is actually yours that you're living?
I agree. I had this great exercise I have in the book that I share with people all the time on how to let go of things. Because I feel like I talk about happy boosters, happy busters. There's a whole bunch of things in there. But the one thing, happy busters to me, after anyone that's been through trauma or abuse or anything, is the guilt, the shame, the fear, the anxiety, and the anger. Okay. And I teach this exercise, and it's exactly what you're talking about. I tell them to envision balloons and fill them up with their anger, their hate, their behavior they don't like, or something that they do that's just like their mother or their dad.
Right.
And I say, okay, now take that balloon and let it go, or burst it with a pen. I don't care how you do it, but you need to understand, is it yours to carry? I ask these questions a lot with my clients and people in the book. I say, you're so anxious or worried about this or whatever it is. And I'm like, is it yours to be worried about? Or is it someone else's? Is that your sister's worry, or your mom's, or your boss's, or, and I realize we even have children and we worry about everything with them, but sometimes their worries aren't our worries, to be honest.
It's their challenges.
Their journey.
Yeah, it's their journey.
Yeah. And I try to explain that to people to let them know, but that just came to my mind. And I thought, I've never even thought about using it for habits or behaviors as much as, I touched on it, but not to the level you're talking about in a family, of how to let those things
Maybe that's
go.
your next book.
Yeah, maybe.
That's going to be a good one too. Your next book on that one, because talk about busting people's games that they play with themselves. But okay,
So, because how many times does our mind get in the way?
Yeah, how many stories are we playing in our lives that's not even our stories? I mean, how many people are taking on their parents' ambitions? It's not even their ambition, because they never picked out their own ambitions. Or marrying the person that their parents want them to marry because they want love from their parents and acceptance, and then it doesn't work out. Or the list goes on and on and on. These unconscious behavior patterns that we pick up from our upbringing that really aren't even ours, and then we find out so much later that we never really wanted it in the first place. And we're like
Yeah.
going through a soul searching of who am I? You know, so yeah,
Oh
but
my
that's fine.
goodness.
That's your journey, but we can condense that journey, that struggle a little bit more. So it's all the good, so you can fill your life with all the good stuff and just condense the suffering
Exactly.
much less.
Let's get to that fifth dimension. Let's
Yeah,
quit living in the trauma and the stuff. Let's
yeah,
move ahead and move above that and
yeah. Let's
start
take our
living in our wholeness and our oneness with everything. That's the way I look at
exactly.
it.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. So for young children, so how can parents and adults in their family give them talk tracks and emotional intelligence to protect themselves from sexual and physical abuse for young children? Because a lot of this happens when they're young and they don't have the confidence and the words to say in those situations. So for people hearing this, what are some things that they can use right now if they're going through it?
I'm going to be very blunt
Go,
because a
please.
lot of therapists will not agree with me, but I'm going to tell you how I raised my daughter because I
Sure.
feared for her so much. Um, the best I think we can do as parents is educate our children. Um, we have to help them understand their personal space,
Mhm.
their bodies, um, what their rights are is just little people. I don't, children are just little us. They're not, anything else.
Right.
And I think the other part of that is also giving them a voice. It's the title of the book. We have to give children a voice.
Yeah, because they don't have a voice. They don't.
When they have a voice, no, we take it away from them from the
Right.
time they're young and start school. And so we have to give them back their voices. We have to listen and we have to respect them and teach them mutual respect for us. Because with all those little things I just mentioned comes truth.
Right.
And they will voice their opinion. My daughter never hesitated once to
Mm-hmm.
tell me if she didn't like someone, if someone made her feel uncomfortable, if
Mm-hmm.
she just, and I would be like, that's okay. Listen to your gut, listen to your instinct. Because this is something we have lost in our society, I think, too much. Is I knew as a child, I know as an adult when I meet people,
Mm-hmm.
if there's someone that's good for me or not. I'm not saying they're a horrible person. I'm just saying, are they good for me or not?
Right.
And children have that instinct even more than we do. And we need
Yeah.
to listen to it. We need to validate it. We need to let them accept it. And we need to quit telling them, no, they don't feel that. Or no, Uncle John is a great guy. Or cousin Drew is a good person. Maybe
Right.
they're not. And maybe we just don't know it. And I don't mean that just to say men. I'm a woman, so that's where I go. And I've been abused by men. But it
Right.
can go vice versa. It can be Aunt Jane or, cousin Susie. I don't know. But I'm
Yeah.
just saying they need their voices. And we need to listen and respect their intuition, their voice. To me, that's the best you can do to save a child.
Yeah. Yeah. That really, really good points. Yeah. I mean, you have to give them talk tracks, so that if they're in a situation, they know what to say and they know how to handle themselves. They may never be in that situation, and that's wonderful. But if ever they were in a situation or they had a friend who were in that situation, they can at least recall, oh, my mommy and daddy told me, no touch, please. And that's
Yes.
what they say.
Well, and the word no is powerful. I even to this day, I teach grown women and some men the
Mhm.
word no, because somewhere along the way, that word was taken from us, especially if you've been a victim. And you have to regain your empowerment and things to be able to say no. And that's part of the voice is no,
And
I'm
it's
not okay
okay to
with you
be
taking
rejected
advantage
for
of
that.
me, or it's okay. Yeah. And that comes with our children too. We have to teach them. My daughter has no problem telling somebody no.
Yeah, and being
And
rejected
she's
for it.
not
So,
disrespectful. That doesn't mean we're teaching them to be disrespectful. Exactly. We just have to teach them how to have that voice and say their part and just be like, no, I'm not okay with that. No, you're too close to me. I don't like this. Or,
yeah.
whatever it is they're feeling and know. And, I think that's the most important part is giving our children voices. and
Yeah.
strength and
Yeah.
empowerment. And the best way to teach them these things is we have to be that. We have to say no. We have to stand up for ourselves, and we have to be respectful to them and respectful to others, and demand respect in return.
Yeah.
And when the children see this, they will mirror this, and they realize that this is proper and healthy behavior. So
Right.
that's how I look at it and how I
That's
see
really
it.
good. Actually, I want to show you something, because I make these early on when my daughters started talking at like 1. I made these flashcards to remind her. I put it on the timeout wall. And so she sits there when she's on timeout, and she looks at these flashcards, and she's been looking at it since she was 1, and they're very, very simple. And my son, he uses the same timeout wall, and he looks at them very, very simply. And they are talk tracks, but they're so familiar, and they can look at the picture and see the talk tracks just to kind of educate them on it. And it's funny, they actually say some of it back to me. So let me go and grab them really quick. Okay, so we're like in the same wavelength, you and I, Mannette. So right now I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old, and sometimes they don't always remember everything. So I made these flashcards, and anybody could do it. You just get images that you like, putting together, go into canva.com, make these little flashcards, print them out, laminate them, and stick them on the wall, preferably the timeout wall. But this one is 1. Okay.
Oh,
And this one is don't touch
how
me.
cute.
Raise your voice if unsafe touch occurs. And it just
I
has
like
pictures. Yeah. And this cartoon, so they can look, and so they sit there and they study it and everything else, so they know. And here's another one. It's for child safety. Say no to bad touch, learn good touch, and don't touch me. Never be afraid to shout and say, "Don't touch me." And it has a picture, so they know what to do. The don't touch me.
Great.
And then pictures of go tell an adult, come here.
Yes.
So
that's another thing that I was going to tell you, because I've kind of started a children's book. I haven't published it or done the artwork yet, but I've written parts of it. And it's a story about a little girl that was abused, of course. And it's her journey of trying to tell the truth and find her voice, and trying to tell people. And this is another big one that I love to stress to children that I feel like are in dangerous situations, or any child, I guess, really. But it's like, go tell someone. And if they don't listen, tell someone else. And if they don't listen, tell someone else, until someone hears you. And that's very important, especially, I think, children in high-risk situations, even more so.
Right.
They need to know that, no, you keep speaking until someone listens and acknowledges.
Exactly. Here's another one. And this actually, I I put the hands and the no hands and the no spots.
Oh yeah,
A boy and
that
girl.
is so good.
In the swimsuit spots. So and it says no touch, please.
Yes, I like that.
No touch, please. So that's, and then I have other flashcards, because I'm lazy. I'm lazy parenting. So say thank you. It's a standard manners. I always go, use your manners. And so they're like, oh, I gotta use the flashcards. Okay. And please don't forget to say please. Yeah. Make good choices. Make good choices.
Oh my gosh. These are great, though, because you're teaching your children respect, and you're teaching them acceptance. Yes. And just, I don't know, just teaching them how to be really good human beings in interaction with other people, which I think is so valuable. And I think we could do more of that nowadays.
It's the basics. It's the foundation for how you start. Here's one for stranger danger. My daughter says that should be danger. Danger danger. And sometimes, like when I'm in the mall or something and she runs off, whatever, just to start talking to her, I'm like, danger, danger. And she can immediately, oh, I remember the flashcard. Oh,
Come back.
yeah. So she's got these, and my son is memorizing it as well. Here's help each other, and then just pictures of her and her cousins helping each
Oh, I like
other.
that.
This one I say this
Mhm.
all the time. Listen and learn. Listen and learn.
Yes.
I say that all the time. Listen and learn.
That's a
I
good one.
I say it all the, and then I always say ask questions,
I like that.
ask questions. And this I use all the time when somebody's being sassy or talking back or not being polite.
Mhm.
Talk nice.
Yes.
Talk nice. Does your words have a smile? Because if it's not smiling, you're not talking nice. I use that all the time.
That's a good one.
Of course, clean up. Clean up.
Mhm.
Um, share.
That's
Share.
good.
Let me see. Take turns. Take turns. Let me see. Oh, uh, give hugs. Give hugs. Give hugs.
I like
As
that.
my dog and hurt my
I
daughter
like
when she
that.
was baby.
The baby. She's
Mhm.
precious. They're adorable.
Yeah. Be patient. And there's pictures of kids being patient. Be patient.
Oh, that's
And the last
good.
one is look both ways.
Yeah. That was really important. It's
Very
like-
important. So that pretty much covers a majority of the things, and they start
Uh-huh.
off with that on the timeout wall, and even in the bathroom when they go to the bathroom, there's two that's sitting right in front of them on the wall when the potty says wash hands, flush toilet. So all my
Yeah.
parenting is I just walk around saying 2 or 3 words: wash hand, flush toilets, listen and learn.
Hey, you know
All
what?
these
But it's
things.
simpler. I think, though, sometimes it can be too complicated. And that's a simplified way to get children to keep up as they mature and grow. Do you know what I mean? Because they'll
I
get to
know.
where more conversations needed. But when they're really young, that's awesome.
Yeah, I say talk
Uh,
nice. And sometimes my daughter, when my husband and I, when she thinks we're not talking nice, which we're talking nice, but sometimes we may not completely agree, and so she'll pull the talk nice flashcard off the
mhm.
wall and give it to us, like the timeout police.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. That's funny.
So
Oh, I love it. I love it.
yeah, and I asked my son because he's not quite talking, and I say, which one is help each other, and he'll point at it because he knows the pictures, and so
Right.
they know which one is what, which one is no touch, please. They know what is what.
Yeah. Because he's how old?
He's two,
He's how old?
two,
Okay. Yeah.
two. Yeah. So for you young parents out there, we're just giving you guys tools because
Yes.
we know how busy it is to be a parent. We know how hard it is to be a parent these days, and we know there isn't very many resources, especially for parents and for young kids. And they don't quite understand all the complications of talking in
Mhm.
language. So sometimes, make little flashcards or just use 2, 3 word simple things. But my daughter has she hasn't much anymore, but when she was first talking, like we would go to the pool and I would just kind of like grab her really quick to just make sure that her swim diaper was not
Mhm.
full. And I would just
Right.
grab it and I would just look, not thinking, but
Uh-huh.
now she's talking and she actually used the flashcard against me and she said, "No touch, please." And I said,
That's awesome though. And I think another great one, I don't know about you, but one thing I think that went a long way with me and my daughter today, who is 32, and I have a 6-month-old grandbaby, 31, excuse me, not 32 yet. And one of the things, we had this amazing, respectful relationship, even to this day. We've been through a
mhm,
lot. And the one thing I think I did from the time she was really small, and this is great for you parents out there listening, is get
mhm,
on your child's level. don't stand over them and don't
Yes.
preach to them from across the, a table, or sit with them, close to them, touch them, and hold their hands, or just, set your hand on their knee or something, and really get eye level like you were doing, and talk to them on their level. And
Right.
this is another big thing that I think is so important, is let your children know that you're human just like them, and you are going to make mistakes too.
Yeah.
We're
learn
none of us are
together.
perfect. We're all human. We're going to mess up. We're going to do good. We're going to make mistakes. And I think it's so important for children to understand that too, because then they learn that they're not perfect either, and they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's part of growing and learning and
Exactly.
advancing. And I do feel that that's really, really important with your children. Get on their level. Let them know you're human. Admit when you've messed up, apologize for your mistakes, teach them how to apologize for their mistakes. It's just a great thing. And that all comes with
Right.
what I call, it boils down to mutual respect.
Right. Right. And we can, and we can, we are giving parents these tools that they can use when the kids are young, and then when they're, become
Mhm.
a preteen or a teenager, they're going to have those conversations, a little bit more adult conversations, and then, on and on as they develop into young adults and beyond, when they become parents of themselves, and they go, I remember how mom and dad talked to me about
Yeah.
this. I'll talk to this about this at their level.
Yes.
So
And as they
love
grow up,
it.
I'm going to give you some insight here, guys. I know. And I'm going to give you insight. As a mom that has raised 2 children, I'm going to tell you that the more respect and that foundation when they're young, at the age you're doing, with the flashcards and the communication, that pays off tenfold when they're a teenager. I'm just being honest, it does. Because if you develop that respect and that communication skills, and those, which I talk about in my book, how important it is to communicate, and that mutual respect and boundaries. When you do that as a young child, they will, as they grow, you will continue to hold on to that. And I just want you to understand that you want their respect, but that means that they're owed your respect. So it goes both ways. We can't just be these, for lack of a better word, a power hungry parent that's like dominating. That's abuse, guys. Manipulation, control, and domination are abuse.
Yeah. And what kind of
So
people do they attract into life when that's what they learn is how to
if
exist in that
exactly,
type
what
of
do you think they're going to
relationship?
go out and do? Your daughters are going to go out and find abusive men, and your sons are going to go out and maybe abuse a daughter, or vice versa. I'm not going to try to
Yeah.
label it one way or another.
That goes back to our earlier discussion about
I think it's
unconscious
important.
conditioning.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, let me ask you
Mhm.
this. Most sexual child abuse is done within a family network for the most part. How can someone get help if they begin to have curiosity for this type of deviant urgings that can cause lifetime of trauma for someone? Both
Well,
sides.
I will be honest. I think a lot of that comes from, let's just be honest, the children that are having those thoughts and feelings have been abused or witnessed abuse.
Right.
This is the truth of it. The average child out there, unless there's just something off, which is very unlikely, like 1% or less than 1%, will they have these kinds of things as much. I mean, I realize we get to adolescence and there's a whole other thing there, and that's
Yeah.
something for maybe a child psychologist.
Right.
But when it comes to most of these children that are going down that path, it's because they've witnessed it or it's happened to them.
So they're
Okay.
unconsciously doing it.
Yes. And so what we have to do is, that's where the thing of having their voice to tell people what's happened to them, so that you can get them the help they need and the guidance, so that they know how to deal with it. I'll share a personal story with everyone,
Yeah.
because this might really help people understand. Because if you have been abused, you are going to have those urges. Okay. It's going to happen to you if you've been through. And when I say that, I'm talking about sexual abuse. Okay. Or, sexual molestation or something. I have a brother that is 11 years younger than me. And I was a very hands-on sister, helping my mom because we had a ranch and things like that. And I remember the day that I went to change his diaper as a little boy, and it entered my mind to do something inappropriate. It entered my mind. It scared me because of the person I am. And I
Right.
jumped back, I threw the diaper on, jumped back against the wall, let him crawl away, and just bawled for an hour because I was so disgusted with myself. But I
Right.
just want people to understand that those urges are real and they're natural. If you've had things happen to you as a child, I was 12 maybe when that happened.
Mm.
Um, and it's horrible because then you have the guilt and the shame and all those other things I talk about, because I can't tell you how long I felt shameful and guilty. And then I didn't want to change his diaper because I was scared. And, I was just, it's all these things.
Mm.
If someone had been helping me or I'd had someone to talk to, I probably could have worked through the process and understood that, okay, this is because of what happened to you. And it would have made perfect sense to me.
Right.
But for me, it was just scary and horrifying because my childhood abuser, my cousin that was older than me, he was abused by another cousin from another side of the family. So it's like we talk about, it's contagious. It's like these contagious viruses or diseases
Yeah.
that penetrate families.
Yeah.
And, when I wrote the book, I actually talked to him about it, and told him I was writing the book and he was in it and everything. And it just kind of said, so what happened to you? And he just started crying and was like, nobody's ever asked me. And he said, yeah, it happened to me. And then I did it to you. And I was like, yeah, so we're all victims, it
Yeah.
follows. Doesn't
The
make
cy-
what he
it's
did right.
yeah.
It's the way it works. It's the
It's a
tragedy
cycle.
of it.
It's the unconscious cycle of bad behavior that
Yeah.
people pick up. And you know, we can stop that. Everybody can stop that by having these coping skills, learning these tools so they can understand, recognize it, address it, and not carry it forward. Because I did a hypnosis session I put on my YouTube channel under the hypnosis playlist. So actually I had a client who had child molestation from her uncle, and she told her mother about it, and he felt so guilty that he actually committed suicide because he couldn't live with what, once he realized that he was sick and he couldn't, you know, he couldn't live with it. And so it's been kind of a dark cloud in the family for a long time, and they've healed and they moved on. But not to, um, label the person, the perpetrator in the family that does this to somebody in the family. They are also, like you said, likely picked it up from bad behavior from somebody else. So
Yes,
it's
they
just
were
the
either a
victim,
victim or they witnessed it. That's usually the two things that happen.
which makes them
And
a
they
victim
just
of
continue.
witnessing too.
Exactly. It's
Yeah,
just a different form.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
everybody
it's
just needs a
horrible.
little, yeah. So everybody, if you're going through it, if you witness it, if you know somebody who's going through it, if you know somebody who's witnessing it, no one is judging or anything else. Just get help.
Yeah.
Just get help so you can stop it from getting further worse than it has to be. Learn the lesson early, recognize, identify, and then rectify so that you can get
Yes.
on to the good stuff. We want to get to the good stuff in your life. Create the
Yeah,
5D and stop
exactly.
living in the 3D trauma. So learn from the 3D stuff. So yeah, it's so basic.
Exactly.
Let me ask you something else. I like that you also offer coaching and help for people who also on the other side of the spectrum are the perpetrator of sexual child abuse as well, so that they can learn to stop it.
Yeah, I don't really work with sorry to clarify, I don't work with perpetrators very very often.
Do you
I'll
refer
talk to
them to somebody
someone.
else? Do you refer
Yes, I
them?
refer to people that specialize in that
Mm-hmm.
area. I work mostly with victims. I
With
do
victims.
most of my clientele are women. I
Mm-hmm.
do retreats and workshops and some one-on-one, and I'm coming up with some video workshops and
Mm-hmm.
things. I'm working on some things like that. But yeah, I don't want to misrepresent, but no, I don't work with them, but I'm very comfortable talking to them. It doesn't bother me to talk to someone that has been a perpetrator or a victim before that, and give them maybe a direction to go.
There you go.
I don't feel that I don't feel that I'm the best person to probably attack that one. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. We want to make some clarification on it too. So, like, in case you have somebody who is the victim of this abuse, and they also have, let's say it's a family member that they love that did this to them, and they also want to give guidance or give direction for them to get help, you will refer them to appropriate person as well. Okay, that's good to know.
Yes, I would refer them to the appropriate people. And I actually have worked with families a little bit.
Really?
Here and there that have been through this in their family unit with some serious abuse of different kinds, and tried to just help get them maybe going in a right direction, and maybe help them figure out which family members maybe need certain kinds of help. You know, at times I've worked with a few families throughout the years. But I usually end up trying to just help people get started and then help them move on to the next thing. That's more where my role ends up a lot of times.
It's definitely a process. And remember, just like you had to do, it doesn't happen overnight. You undid 4 generations of sexual child abuse and this type of behavior. 4 generations. It's really, you don't undo that overnight, but you can get started in one night. So,
yes, you can.
Okay, so there is a popular conspiracy about child sex ring, which feeds deep state cabal. Okay, now the slogan, Save the Children, is actually a hijacked name from a legitimate charity. And I've spoken to some people who work for children's nonprofit groups who say that the sensationalizing of this conspiracy actually detracts from real nonprofits. They would rather people support actual nonprofits that are working with limited resources to address human trafficking and underage prostitution, especially in third world countries where it is rampant. So there is a legitimate nonprofit agencies and police who work to seek out the mafia and consumers that perpetuate this type of exploitation. So it does happen, this type of exploitation. What are some constructive ways for people to actually get involved in solving human trafficking and underage prostitution? So
I really think, I'm not an expert on all of that, but the fact is, I think for any of us, I don't care who you are, if you're someone that knows someone that's been abused, or maybe you know someone that's been trafficked, or maybe you have yourself or a family member, is in today's society, I think the best thing any of us can do is just get involved. And you can get involved in different ways. You can speak out. You can support these organizations that are doing the work, like you're talking about, the ones that
they're
really
very
are
underfunded.
doing the work out there.
They're underfunded. They don't have a lot of volunteers. And volunteers.
Maybe maybe, support them, maybe just call them and see what you can do. What can you offer to the table? It's similar to what I did here where I live in Colorado. I was teaching a lot of before COVID's kind of messed things up, but I would teach these classes at this organization here that helped women get back on their feet that were in abusive situations, and a few men. But I'd teach classes and help. That was my way, and I'd give a little money too. But you can do that with the trafficking. You can do that with other organizations locally where you live. Search out what's going on where you are and start contributing however you can contribute. I don't know what that is. Maybe that's, in some cases that could be as simple. I hate to say this could be a young mom that needs diapers for her child or needs childcare of some sort. Maybe they, like the place I had, they had a childcare facility and people would volunteer to help out there while these women took classes so they could improve their lives. There's so many things, but there's some great organizations out there, guys, that are real and they're there and they're doing things.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked, I think, before the program, maybe you're a retired police officer or something.
Yep.
Maybe you can contribute a little time or your knowledge to teach others how to do what you know or something. There's just so many ways to help. It's just us all finding what that is and
Yeah.
contributing however we can.
And it's not really hard to do. I mean, if it is a topic, underage prostitution, human trafficking, and children human trafficking, all of that, if that is something that you're really, really attracted to and you're so passionate about it, it doesn't take very long to find organizations in your local area in which you can call and see how can you help.
Yeah, just Google.
Google is a
or
wonderful thing.
Safari or whatever you use. Just
Yeah.
look for it. There's so many in so many cities everywhere. There's all over. So just search out and see what you can do. And if some of it's too hard for you, I realize child trafficking and sex trafficking is hard. It's a hard reality out there that's real.
Yeah.
And people don't even want to admit it's real. But it's a real thing happening, guys, all over. And it's horrific. So maybe you don't have the stomach for the hard part, but maybe you can do something in another way. Just find what you can do. That's always my suggestion.
And the easiest thing to do is to just Google these organizations that already exist and they're actually working with real issues that they've found.
Yeah.
And you can ask them what they can do to help, because maybe they'll need somebody to help with rehabilitating the people that they have, found is coming out of these incidents, or whatever. There's so many different ways you can call, and they don't have very many volunteers. They don't have a lot of resources. And since there seems to be a lot of people who's really interested in child prostitution and human trafficking as an issue, use that energy to help these nonprofits that are actually looking to make that connection with those people. So that's some really good advice.
Or, another thing we could do with it is, and with all the social media out there, look up and find the good organizations and share their hashtags and their websites and say, if you want to help, if you want to do something, then contact these people and figure out what you can do. I mean, with social media, we can share things unbelievably. If you're passionate about it and you want to do something, then you helping may get 10, 20, 100 people helping.
Right. So that's a really good way to answer that question for those who are really interested in ending human trafficking and underage prostitution. So there's lots of ways to get involved. And remember, you don't have to save the world. There's lots of different things that you can be involved in. If you're really called for something, like you are really called for something, then that is for you. But it doesn't make you a bad person if you don't get involved in this profit and this nonprofit and this cause and this cause. There's so many, whatever you're really drawn to. But this seems to be one that some people are really, really drawn to. So we're just giving you guys, like we'll be talking tools and resources. We're giving you resources to take that passion and put it into actual nonprofits that are actually working to eradicate this problem that they are finding.
Right.
Yeah. So let me ask.
So important.
Yes. Let me ask you this about coping skills. So what are some coping skills that parents can utilize when life gets tough and they may be prone to lashing out on their children or their loved ones? So let's give some parents some coping skills, or just adults.
I think the best advice I could give any parent anywhere, and I used to teach this in my classes all the time, because they would say, I'm losing my mind, or how it is, you got young children. There's times you're just losing it. They're sick. You don't get sleep. They don't get sleep. Life is just crazy. So my best advice, and I know this sounds crazy to some people, but this is my best advice ever, is it gets too much. Okay, let's just say you've got an infant. Okay, and they've been sick and you're just losing it.
Make sure you still gotta get up to go to work next day.
Yeah, make sure the diaper's changed. Make sure they're fed. Lay them in the crib and walk away. When it's too much, walk away is my advice. Okay, make sure they're safe, but then take a break. And this goes on until they're grown. I'm just going to say the same concept, but you just do it different ways. You know, if you have a toddler, and yes, we do not want to use TVs and stuff as babysitters, but when you're having almost a meltdown, guess what? Give the child their favorite little show, walk away, take 15, 30 minutes for yourself and get your composure. Because if you're listening to this, maybe you've been through stuff too, and now maybe you're raising children and maybe they've been through something. It's like I said, we're all human. We're not perfect. And we have to give ourselves a break sometime. That's in one of my things I teach in the book is like a 7-step process. And I'm like, give yourself a break. Okay. We're not going to do it right. I mean, I've had one mom that said, is it terrible that when my child starts losing it, then I give them like the TV thing or whatever, and I go hide in the closet? I said, no, it's not terrible at all. You need 5 minutes sometimes.
Yeah. You can't push yourself, pressure breaks pipes and pressure breaks people.
Exactly.
You keep pushing yourself and pushing yourself, and life is going to happen. You might be going through a divorce, you might be going through some work changes, you might be going through some financial issues. The list goes on and on. And you don't intend on hurting the people that you love, but sometimes all that pressure, and then something comes up, and now you're lashing out on them. And how many times do you feel bad after, like, God, I really handled that the wrong way. I could have handled it differently. So when you're in the heat of that moment, these are some suggestions.
Yes. And also too, guys, if you do find yourself lashing out, like you just lose your crap. Okay. Let's just be honest. We've all done it. If you find yourself doing it, as soon as you can, just stop. You don't have to finish the sentence. Just stop. I don't care if it's mid-sentence. Stop, get your composure, and then do the right thing. If you were inappropriate, apologize. I don't care if that child is 2 foot tall or 6 foot tall. Get your crap together and take responsibility for your actions and apologize. Because you need to understand that everything you do and how you react with your children and in your relationships teaches everyone around you how to act.
And you teach them how to behave.
That's how we learn. Exactly. So if you can stop yourself and then you can correct your behavior or handle it in an appropriate way, what have you taught them? Something amazing. That's good. There's nothing wrong with that. So that would be my advice. That's what I used to do. Even if I was getting upset, I just stop myself. And then I would just be like, give me 5 minutes. Then I would probably sit down, have a discussion, and apologize for my behavior and let them know that that was not the appropriate behavior. And you don't need to bribe them or pay them off for your bad behavior either, by the way. You can just be like, okay, that was not appropriate. I will work really hard to never do that again. And try not to do it again, for goodness sakes. Don't keep repeating it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, my daughter reminds me sometimes too, use your manners.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all get in the heat of the moment and forget our manners. We all have done it. We're not imperfect. We are imperfect. I mean, we're not going to do it. We're going to mess up.
Break. Give yourself.
I think
but
that's
at least
important.
You recognize it.
Just take responsibility.
Exactly. But at least you recognize
it. And the quicker
it.
you recognize it and change it.
That's the key. Recognize it and change it. And you can Google ways to deal with the same. See how Google has a really wonderful resource to give parents and people ways to cope with things. Like, oh, I'm struggling with this, ways to cope with that. And then they'll give you like a list of things. And you can kind of go through, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. The next time I'm going to try this.
Exactly. But I think the hardest thing too, for me, I think in all of us, if you're a parent that has survived abuse or something and you're trying to raise your children, it is hard. You're constantly questioning, you worry a lot, you feel guilty for everything that's happened to you and everything you've done is shameful. I mean, you carry all those burdens. And I think the biggest thing is just remember, it's okay.
Yeah.
you're not going to do it right all the time. I mean, I'm not a perfect parent either. I messed up many times. I tell my daughter, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't even believe I got that done. But it's okay to mess up. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to make mistakes. And that's what makes us grow and expand and evolve, is growing and learning from our mistakes, improving and changing and adapting and learning. That's what makes us go from the third dimension to the fifth, is those same things. I mean, it's no different than parenting.
It is. We prepare ourselves up to the fifth dimension of awareness. I love that.
Exactly.
Okay, well, let's ask a dating question. So, why is the bad boy or the damsel in distress, so attractive to many people who are dating?
I think a lot of it has to do with their history.
Is it?
It usually has to do with whatever they've experienced before that. So if you're the damsel in distress, let's just say, usually that's because your mother played that role, your grandmother, your auntie, maybe you've already played that role as a child to get attention because you were being manipulated or abused or something. That's what I think it goes on more than not. Bad boy, the same thing. It's just that you're doing this thing of where, oh, my dad played the bad boy, I'm going to play the bad boy. It worked. My uncle, my grandfather. People do things that work for them. That's why people that sometimes after they've been abused play the victim role the rest of their life. They get something from it. They get some kind of satisfaction, or
is that the way that they've learned? Is that the way they learn that that's how they get love? So they just constantly play that role or look for that role?
Exactly. To them, that's their quote version of love. It's not what I would consider love, but to them, it fits in that category. Same thing with the bad boy and the damsel. She learns that if I do this, they'll take care of me, or I'll get what I want. It's the crying wolf a little. The bad boy learns that, oh, if I'm tough and I do this, then I'll intimidate them and I'll get what I want. It's just different behaviors, but that's
but what happened? Yeah, but you counsel a lot of women that go through these types of abusive relationships. What happens when the bad boy turns into the abusive husband? It's still the bad boy. You wanted the bad boy, just kind of amplified to the abusive husband.
Because that's when the woman has to understand her own self-worth and understand her own self-respect. Because my theory is that how you break the cycle of abuse is you create your own self-love, your self-respect, which creates self-worth, self-value. Then guess what? You won't accept that bad boy. You won't even give him the look, because you see red flag and you're worth more than that.
You don't want that type of relationship.
No, exactly.
You've already learned the lesson. You learned the lesson. You learned the lesson without even having to go through the lesson.
Exactly.
What we talked about earlier, you shorted your suffering.
Exactly. And that's what the key is. And that's what I've come to the solution of, is it's all about self-value, self-respect, self-empowerment. Because once you give someone that, I don't care who you are, you can give a child that, a woman, a man, a mother, a grandmother, a grandfather, I don't care who it is. They will not accept those bad behaviors. That's what happened to me. Once I understood and I started valuing myself and valuing my worth and realizing I'm worth more than being abused and walked on and treated like crap, I didn't accept those behaviors anymore from anybody. Even to this day, I do not accept those behaviors from anyone.
Even though it took almost 4 generations of carried on unconscious conditioning, and you picked it up. That's how it transpired. Now, the interesting thing about the damsel in distress role, the damsel in distress, is for the damsel in distress, and the constant victimhood of the damsel is that eventually you get married to the guy, and then the guy or your spouse is like, I need you to help yourself out. I need you to help me out. I need you to, you know, I need you to pitch in. I can't always be there to save you. And I need a partner in life.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you got to all of a sudden unlearn the damsel victim, save me all the time role. So it doesn't
Right.
always, life will challenge your concept of
It
what works
will.
for you.
What you feel you deserve, you will receive.
Hmm.
So,
Get what
and
you
that
are,
goes,
huh? You get
what
what you
you are
are.
is what, yes, exactly. It's like what you eat, that's what you are. What you are is what you are. You know, what you feel you deserve is what you will receive.
You
All those
attract what
things
you
are the
are.
same. Exactly. And so for me, what I would say is there's two things that have to happen in that relationship. One, the male part in this case has to step up and say, no, he's got to quit picking her up every time she falls and saving her. He's got
Mm-hmm.
to step
Yeah.
back and let her stand on her own 2 feet.
Mm-hmm.
She has to take responsibility for her emotions and her actions.
Mm.
And once she takes responsibility, she'll start being stronger. But she has to step up and take responsibility, and not everyone will. So people need to understand in relationships that not everybody's going to play their role the way you want them to play it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody's on the same journey. We're
Yeah.
all on different journeys, and sometimes our journeys can come together and they can commingle and you can grow with each other.
Right.
Sometimes you can come together and one grows and one's left behind, like in the
Mm.
race.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on individual. I mean, both individuals have to be willing to work at it, and both individuals have to be able to face the reality of their situation. If you're not
Right.
willing to face the truth, you're not going to get anywhere. I talk about that a lot in the book. You got to face the truth of your reality, whatever that is, wherever you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Only then can you do something about it.
Well, I mean, that's really how you heal these unconscious wounds and learn to
Mhm.
attract a healthy, loving relationship is by doing what you've been saying.
Yeah,
So,
it
and
is.
and dating is so eye-opening what you are attracted to and what you're not attracted to. And if you're getting something that you're consistently and you don't like it, you may have to take a step back and assess what is it that you keep liking and attracting? Is it something that comes from your family history that you unconsciously picked up? Like you've been
Mhm.
saying this whole time, oftentimes it is. If we set,
Yes.
so,
What do you think we pick? The men pick their mothers or grandmothers, the women
mm.
pick their dads, their uncles, or their
Or if they
grandfathers.
don't like it, they choose to pick the
We
opposite.
pick what we're familiar.
Right.
Yeah, in some cases, yes, we'll go extreme
Hmm.
opposite in some cases. But a lot of times we go with what's familiar. We go with our norm. I always say, that's what happens when women and men get in these abusive relationships. It's their norm. It's what they've always
Right.
known. So they have to break their norm and do something different.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're right. You're right on it. It's you have to become self-aware of why are you attracted to that person. It's the same person in different clothing, different hairstyle.
Yeah.
It's the same person over and over. What is it
Yeah.
in that person you're so attracted to, and where does that lead back to your past and your
Yeah. Where
past
did you learn
experiences
it?
and what?
Where did you learn it? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Where
Well,
did you think that became okay?
yeah,
It's
that's
maybe not okay. Yeah.
well, that's the beginnings in Buddhism. They call that's the beginnings of becoming a Buddha is to be self-aware of how you create your reality,
Yes. Yes.
and we're all energy in these avatars in these roles that we play, but we can have the soldier and how we want to. So we have to be aware of why do you attract and create your world the way you do. And it comes down to these patterns of thought and feelings that we create, and where does that come from? And if it doesn't serve you, learn
To
something
let
new.
it go.
That's right, and do that as well. Okay, so in
Replace it.
Buddhism, right, and
Mhm.
so in Buddhism we also have this concept of a dual nature to compassion called self-compassion, which is compassion for others as well as compassion for yourself. However, there isn't a formal word for self-compassion in English. Okay, I looked
Right.
it up. So how can people learn self-compassion?
It's a good one. That's pretty much the first big chapter of learning in my book. Once you get past the story and the basics, then it comes into this.
Yeah.
And I try to help people start learning that through self-awareness, like you were
Mm,
talking about. I teach people mirror exercises to where they look in the mirror and they really truly look at themselves, and they don't just look at their faults. They look at their qualities, their what makes them unique and special, because that's that self-care thing, I think,
right.
is learning to care for yourself. I always tell people, I've done this for years in workshops and things, is I'm like, do you treat yourself as well as you treat your sister, your best friend, your
Mm,
mother?
mm,
Most women don't. They
mm,
don't. I have them look in mirrors and tell themselves they love themselves, like in first person, like I can do it because I did it years ago. Mannette, I love you. I love the
mm-hmm.
person you are and what you do. And it's teaching people to embrace that part of them, because I do think we have a problem in our culture. I think you were so on something in that Buddhist part of that
Yeah,
is it's not just about how we treat others, it's how we treat ourselves. Because how
right.
we treat ourselves is a reflection of how we feel about others. And I think it's so important to learn how to do that.
Yeah.
And it's not selfish. I'm not talking about becoming a narcissist here. I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking about just learning to appreciate your qualities, your personal greatness, and how you fit into this beautiful planet and this humanity and everything else. And
Yeah,
everybody has amazing qualities of some kind. They just need to look inside and see what they are, or look outside and see what they are, whatever it is for them.
right.
And I think that's the big thing right there. That's what I think you're talking about. And you can tell
Yeah.
me if I'm on it or
No,
not, but
that's true. Self-compassion is so critical in the West. We don't even have a word for self-compassion in the English language, and that's pretty telling right there. Siddhartha Gautama, the first Buddha, he had this wonderful saying that many monks and nuns will repeat, and it is this, that you yourself deserve your love and compassion more than anybody else in the universe.
I agree
Yeah,
1,000%.
yeah,
I talk about that all the time, that,
yeah.
and I call it self-love. In the book,
Mm-hmm.
I say there's self-acceptance, self-love, and self-respect. And I think it fits into the self-love of
Yeah,
what you're speaking of. And it's about loving yourself. And when I say love yourself, I'm talking about from the inside out, because most people that have been through trauma and abuse, they're missing that part. There's
right.
usually a vacancy somewhere in their heart, their soul, whatever you want to call that part of them. And we have to learn to fill that back up with
Mm,
love, acceptance, and things like that. And you have to learn how to go inside and just appreciate the human being you are, the spirit you are, being here and existing in
yeah,
this life. And I think that's it. And what is your journey, and why are you doing it, and why, I often think, why do so many people suffer, and why do so many people go through trauma and things? There's always a lesson to be
yeah,
learned. There's always something to grow and expand from.
yeah.
So are you getting it while you're here? Are you expanding? Are you learning? Are you growing? To me, that's just as much of a part of it as the healing. It's the healing, it's the recovery, is those
Right.
things. So
Well said. Well, that's a wonderful takeaway and message for people to, take home with them. Everybody, Manette actually offers classes, retreats, and workshops, and all the information of what she's offering can be found on her website, which is Mannette, Mannette, Morgan, Morgan.com. So MannetteMorgan.com is where you can get all her offerings and her books and workshops and retreats. Also, Mannette, thank you for sharing your personal expertise in this very, very common 3D problem. that many people struggle to overcome. So let's all overcome them, learn from them, shorten up that suffering time frame so you can get to the good stuff. Like this is the suffering in your life. It used to be this, it's like this. Now the rest of your life is like this. It's just whoosh.
We don't need this suffering.
We don't need that
we
suffering.
need this cut.
Let's condense it down to like
exactly.
And get the lesson, learn from it, and then spend the rest of our life blowing our mind, going, "Wow, that was great. Oh, that's great too." Just get to the 5D and just get to the really good stuff.
Soar. Yeah, I'm going to say that the greatest thing I have ever done for myself, just so people know, is to learn and grow and leave the 3D behind. I definitely feel I live on a different place at this point in my life, and I have for a long time. It's not something new for me. And it just gets easier, guys. Anybody out there listening to what Vaughn has to offer and the things she talks about with all these things, it's so worth it to do the work. You can have these amazing lives that feel so fulfilled, so joyful, and the petty stuff won't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
The little things just kind of float away. They don't even matter because you're in such a different place and you feel so differently. And I wish that for everyone out there in the world and everyone that's ever survived any kind of abuse or gone through things. I wish them all, I want them to have that fulfillment and love and happiness that I somehow obtained. And I think mine was kind of random, but I got there somehow. And it was an amazing thing. And I wouldn't change it for anything. I wouldn't change any of my life.
Yeah.
It is.
Well,
and it's made me the person I am today. And I'm so grateful.
Yeah, well, that is really good to hear. A lot of people, kind of wonder, why am I suffering? Why me? Ooh, why me? This is so horrible. But there's another side to it, and you can come out of it stronger, and better, like you have. So, life lessons, everybody, we can shorten them. Get the learning done early.
Yes. And just, grow and become the person you can. If you don't mind, I was going to show the cover of the book. So people, if they just want to look. Yeah, there you go.
Finding your voice.
Yeah. So if you, just to give you a visual, I'm a visual person. So
well,
it's a little easier to catch when you see it.
Yeah, well, I put all the links and everything in the description, and it was so much fun. I could talk to you for quite some time, but thank you to our listeners for listening to another enlightening conversation. Until next time, blessings.
Blessings. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Merkaba Chakras, where we talk Buddhism in the 5th dimension. For more information about today's guest, please go to the show description. For more information about Vaughn's metaphysical work, please go to merkabachakras.com. The views expressed today are for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily reflect the views of the host or replace any medical or legal advice. Don't forget to subscribe for more interviews about the 5th dimension. Until we meet again, blessings.